That's very kind. I will face the screen. Help me a lot with getting through what is a pretty outwide subject matter. So appreciate the conference for having me and everybody engaging and having a listen. So let's go. Covering spirituality in capital markets and mining and the pursuit of meaning and pattern. And we're doing it within these frameworks that everybody's here for today, which is capital markets and mining, not traditional places that you would expect to find spirituality. Quite aggressive and egoic sort of human constructs. I'm very familiar with them. So I thought I'd start with a piece from arguably the greatest mind of the modern era, Albert Einstein, and he said, "He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead." So he advocated the search for spirituality, and he also said that what I see in nature is a magnificent structure that we can comprehend only very imperfectly, and that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility. This is a genuinely religious feeling that has nothing to do with mysticism. A bit about my background. Do I have any legitimacy in talking to this? I'm the founder and chairman at Nero Resource Fund. We've been operating in capital markets for plus 13 years. We've returned 1,600% at a plus 25% compound return annually. We run about 180 million of funds under management, and we've returned 140 odd million to investors over that journey. Today we've used AI for a lot of the augmentation of the presentation. I think it's important to acknowledge that. It's an incredible tool. Fascinates me deeply around where we're all heading in regards to the use of AI. We've used platforms such as OpenAI, Perplexity, Gemini, so well-established products. So the framework for the analysis, religion is an organised human framework of beliefs, and it's an external authority instructor, and it typically contains collective rituals such as prayer. Spirituality is really seeking connection to something greater. It's open source by design, and there's no ownership. So it's a subjective process of exploration. And interestingly, in 2017, Pew Research noticed a really clear move towards the search for spirituality within America. So today we're going to define spirituality as the detection of potentially non-random order in complex phenomena. So trying to demonstrate something that isn't random and therefore sort of suggests possibly architecture. And I want to be clear, this is kind of the disclaimer page. Correlation doesn't equal causation. So yeah, want to stay that up front. And here you can see drowning versus nuclear energy production. I'm pretty confident that the two correlate, but there's no causation. So we're seeking symmetry from the macro to the micro. So we're gonna walk through from the universe through to nature, and then through to markets and mining. And we're going to explore three core concepts: fractals, the golden ratio, and the Fibonacci sequence. So some definitions. Fractals are patterns repeating at different scales. They're essentially a form within which you can zoom in and out, and the pattern repeats. The golden ratio is 1.618. It's a number that appears when a whole is divided into two parts, so that the larger part divided by the smaller is the same as the whole divided by the larger. And the Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers where each number is the sum of the two before it. So at the universe level, we see perhaps an imperfect fractal. Astrophysicist John Anasto demonstrated fractal distribution across the cosmic web, revealing recurring patterns across galactic scales. Important to note here that it's at a sub 300 million light year scale, and it does become uniform at larger scales. We also see golden ratio in spiral galaxies. It's the strongest empirical connection between cosmic structure and the mathematical patterns related to the golden ratio. And Davis demonstrated a logarithmic spiral is a prominent feature appearing in a majority of observed galaxies. We also see the Fibonacci sequence, perhaps slightly less so, but it is evident. It's observed in around about 10% of spiral galaxies, and recent research as well around light suggests the presence of the Fibonacci sequence within the travel of light. So in the natural environment, where do we see fractals? It's a kind of consistent language for nature's forms. We observe it in tree branches, river networks, coastlines, clouds, and lightning patterns. Its mechanism is a simple recursive rule producing complex diversity seen in living systems. And the function, for example, fractal branching optimizes transport in trees, lungs, and vessels. We also see the golden ratio through the natural environment, phylotaxis in plants. We see it in spiral geometry, in shells and other natural forms, and perhaps most curious, we see it in DNA structure. So it's within all of you sitting here right now. The Fibonacci sequence also appears in nature. We see it in tree branching. Trees often distribute branches by Fibonacci sequence. We see it in the spirals of pine cones taking on adjacent Fibonacci numbers, and we see it in cellular replication. So growth tends to follow Fibonacci sum proportional scaling. So to something more relevant perhaps to today, where do we see it in capital markets? Well, fractal patterns, fractal concepts offer a framework for understanding volatility, clustering, liquidity cycles, and systemic risk patterns. And the Bank of England fractal market hypothesis and its ability for the stability of financial markets demonstrated that the dynamic of market prices, in particular self-similarity, might be caused by the interactions of agents with different time horizons. This structure appears to be associated with a special sort of stability that can be disrupted, causing prices to crash if the normal interaction of these agents breaks down. And this is probably the key point. Self-similarity also implies a greater degree of persistence than we might expect to observe under alternative theories of financial market pricing. So I've long held issue with efficient market hypothesis, and I was happy to see this in the workflow. We also see the golden ratio, various studies. I'll focus here on golden ratio based capital structure as a tool for boosting firm performance. Empirical results confirm that firms with capital structures closer to the golden ratio, 61.8% debt to 38.2% equity, demonstrate superior financial performance. So we see it in debt to equity mixes, and we also see it in modern portfolio management theory, promoting the 60-40 portfolio. And really fascinating, a study demonstrated that even tweaking that to exactly the golden ratio, 61.8% equities and 38.2% fixed income, delivered higher risk-adjusted returns than the traditional 60-40 model. Now, again, this is not an area I have I'm not here to preach, I'm not here to advocate portfolio theory or any of that, but fascinating that these studies advocate. Perhaps most controversially, the Fibonacci sequence is used a lot within capital markets. I don't follow the tea leaves. I want to make that clear. I'm a fundamental investor, a value investor. So again, this is kind of unnatural ground for me to explore, but the evidence is as such. So yeah, numerous studies, Fibonacci ratios are reported on the financial markets, and the study theoretically explained why these ratios are more subject to appear than not on the market. Shared market opinions and behavioural regularities tend to translate into Fibonacci proportionate moves, implying a structured rather than random component of price formation in complex systems. And where do we see it in mining and geology? And again, to some of the enjoyment I've had in putting this deck together and exploring the concept, I really didn't expect to see this sort of material. So I have run this past my very good friend and colleague at Nero, Professor Stefan Hagman. He's the head of the CET and Centre of Exploration Targeting at UWA. He's one of the foremost structural geologists globally within academia. And I did get him to check everything, so it is confirmed and validated. So we see it in geology and ore bodies, ore distribution, ore grades and vein densities follow fractal frameworks. We see it in fault systems, fractal analysis predicting hydrothermal pathways. So yeah, it's predictive. Fractal dimension is an effective proxy for identifying mineralized versus barren zones in gold systems. We also see it in engineering and processing, comminution, fractal energy models in processing for grind energy and optimizing mill performance, as used for predictive modeling, frameworks for linking microstructural complexity to mine economics. The golden ratio also manifests as a mathematical pattern of structure across crystalline, geological and engineered systems. So it's present in quasi-crystals, in mineral geometry, forms like pyrite and some meteorites. And it's in engineering design, so applying golden ratio proportions to structural grids such as underground mining increases load distribution balance and seismic resilience, and optimizes airflow in vent systems. Fibonacci sequence in mining and geology. We see it in geologic scaling, fault segments revealing hierarchical branching, approximating Fibonacci-like distributions. We see it in mineral geometry, self-similar structures inspire geostatistical modelling, algorithms that apply Fibonacci or golden ratio scaling. And we see it in mineral fluid dynamics, recursive feedback loops in stress and material flow. And recursion's a really fascinating area of inquiry. It's used a lot throughout compute and IT. So perhaps to the most controversial part of the exploration here, can we make a probabilistic assessment? So I do believe any inquiry with regards to spirituality is within oneself, so I want to make that clear. And so in this instance, I've sort of reverted to the AI, and I've gone to Perplexity to the deep research function. And for full disclosure, this is exactly the prompt that I've used. Is there a case for identifying spirituality as the detection of potentially non-random order in complex phenomena? If so, can one suggest its presence probabilistically by looking at the occurrence of fractals, the golden ratio, and the Fibonacci sequence across scales, as we've just covered, from the universe to nature to human constructs such as capital markets and mining? If so, give us a probability. So I thought reasonably long and hard for an AI on that, and these are the answers. At a very high confidence level, 95 to 99%, confidence that the patterns are non-random in specific, well-documented cases. In 70 to 85% confidence in the general hypothesis that a meaningful non-random order underlies complex systems at multiple scales, as we've just walked through. And a 60 to 75% confidence that spiritual experiences represent genuine detection of this order rather than pure apophenia. So, the probabilistic case for spirituality, I would perhaps propose that randomness alone feels increasingly improbable. Is it all random? There's statistical evidence that suggests these patterns occur far more frequently than random chance would predict. It doesn't exclude randomness, but it does suggest architecture, and probabilistically unlikely that it would occur in a purely random fashion. So there are confounding factors, I want to be clear about that. Confirmation bias, irrational belief driving self-fulfilling prophecy, and sample sizing. Perhaps the most important part of the chat here is why foster it even if it doesn't exist? And I think this is really key. So there's a lot of evidence to support performance benefits in markets and mining. Stanford affiliate research, debiasing investment decisions, the role of mindfulness, concluded that mindfulness acts as a mental circuit breaker, creating cognitive space before reaction, regulating stress-driven behaviour, and enabling more deliberate data-driven investment judgment. I can talk personally to that. I practice mindfulness, and without question it helps me pause and reflect prior to making intuitive decisions in a time frame that is perhaps suboptimal. Burrows states, mindfulness contributes to personal transformation and spiritual engagement in the workplace, allowing employees to find meaning in their work and sustain ethical decision making, even in physically and psychologically demanding conditions. And I think that's particularly relevant to mining. You know, there's very few industries that are more psychologically and physically demanding than mining. So yeah, I'd like to strongly advocate for mindfulness and spiritual consideration within the sector. And it may be conceived as an investment in your people and culture, where return on investment can be significant through financial performance, safety outcomes, and productivity. A final thought, thank you all for lasting this long. A spiritual analogue, the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, predates science by 2,000 years, and modern complexity theory perhaps now mirrors this, and perhaps it's two languages describing one underlying principle of unity and reflection. And then, yeah, just sincere gratitude. As part of my personal journey of discovery, try to practice daily gratitude, and today I'm just incredibly grateful to have this opportunity to speak to everybody, and incredibly thankful for you paying attention and having a listen. Thank you.